Has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you?
You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the
Wait a minute, just stay on the line so we can know what's going on until the police get there.
The intersection of the 5 and the 91 freeway. One thing we have been noticing, again, it's a very slow pursuit, followed by numerous highway patrol vehicles, but because of the intensity, it seems like people have heard about what's going on and to do, and the main thing is to get him pulled over as safely as possible, and there's only a couple ways that'll happen. One is him just pulling over and or running out of gas. So at this point, we can only pray that they'll be able to pull this off in a safe measure.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson.
Do you remember where you were when the O.J. Simpson verdict was released? I sure do. I was in my class had gotten out for one of my broadcast journalism classes, and I was standing there, and there were black and white friends of mine and people that I didn't know from class, and we're all watching it, and the verdict was released, and my very dear friend who grew up on the south side of Chicago, and me on the north by northwest side in the suburbs, had opposite reactions, and I was like, what in God's name, dude? And we loved each other, and we're deep friends, and we stayed very good friends to this very day. And he's a photographer, news photographer up in Chicago, and we catch up every once in a while regularly. I love that man. Anyways, so his reaction was the opposite, and we're walking back home as I continued to be like, what the hell, dude? And, you know, it got so frustrating that I said, all right, I'll talk to you later. I had to kind of split off from him. And I mean, it didn't hurt our friendship, but it was like, dude, I can't deal with this. And it's quite profound. Obviously, it'd be easy for him to deal with it because he was happy and I was not, right? So, and I didn't want to be negative on my friend. I was just profoundly blown away. And there's so much to talk about tonight with the death of O.J. Simpson. Thank God the man's dead, but no peace for the Goldman family. No peace for Nicole's family, whoever they are remain. I don't recall many of them, but I know Ron Goldman has been an amazing man and an advocate for his beloved son, who to this day never has seen justice. And by the way, now that O.J.'s dead, are you who's going to be looking for the killers now? Who's going to be looking for the killers now? That's what O.J. was doing to his last dying breath. We're all sure of that, aren't we? Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk to you about this. I want to ask you some questions about this. Critical to me, and I would love to hear your story about what's your most memorable, and we're going to be reliving these throughout the night. What is your most memorable moment from that trial? Or it could be from the moment the verdict came out and the reaction that you had and maybe some of your friends had, etc., like mine. It could be anything. But what is your most memorable moment from the trial or your personal life when it happened and you found out about it? And do you think O.J. killed Nicole and Ron? I mean, it's almost laughable that I ask you that, but because there's no question by anybody who's got a freaking brain that it was O.J. You're going to be hearing some gripping testimony, or not testimony, but talk to Fox News' Eric Shawn, who was literally reporting on this 30 years ago, who's still on staff at Fox News. What he says was never shown was brutal, unbelievable, disgusting, outrageous photos that showed how much this was a crime of passion, that O.J. slaughtered these two because he was jealous and he was an abuser. And you heard the 911 tape of his ex-wife calling because he beat the snot out of her. And you also, what also has come out is what Al Cowlings, who was driving that Bronco, we heard part of the Bronco chase, what he said was in the civil trial when he was pulled in there, when he was found to be responsible for O.J. O.J. was found responsible for the killings. What that showed right there, Al Cowlings talked about the bruises and the beatings that O.J. did on her. And to think that people cheered because of their blindness for what they believed was a racial animus with the cops, going on them. But my gosh, If they had known what is known now, you know what I'm saying? If they had seen what was seen, would they have still done? I don't know. But do you think, here's another one I want to ask you. Do you think Al Collins, who was driving that Bronco and was arrested at the end of that chase, or somebody else? Al was, of course, a veteran NFL player who was driving the slow-speed Bronco in the slow-speed chase as the coward O.J. hid in the back. Do you think that Al Collins or somebody else will write a tell-all book that will tell them, that'll say what O.J. really told him? I mean, did O.J. tell Al, yeah, Al, I did it, but damn it, I didn't mean to, I didn't want to, whatever, I don't know. And will we ever learn the truth, truthfully? 800-288-WBAP, lines wide open for you at 800-288-9227. O.J. Simpson dead at 76 after a cancer battle that he held away from anybody. He kept it secret, at least in the public eye, which the public wasn't following him and couldn't stand him. He went to jail, as we know, for 9 years, from I think it was 07 to 17, or maybe it was 10 years, for Las Vegas. He's trying to get his memorabilia back, but holding people up at gunpoint, kidnapping them, or something of that nature, depriving them of their ability to just leave the room at gunpoint. Thankfully, he was convicted and thrown in jail. Partial justice in what was known to be the homicide that he was responsible for, and all of us that have a brain think he did it. What would be very interesting would be to hear from an African-American person who says, you know what, Croc, I was like your friend Dave, who way back when cheered, but now here I am, whatever it would be, how many years later, 30 years later, and you know what, Chris, I gotta say he was guilty and I was wrong, but here's why I felt that way. That would be fascinating to hear from you too, as a black American. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. Lines wide open. What is your most memorable moment from the O.J. trial, or in your personal life, maybe, when the reactions came down and what you saw from your friends or others? And do you think Al Collins, do you think O.J. actually killed Nicole and Ron? I mean, maybe we'll find one person out there that still thinks O.J. was this close to getting the killer all of his life, which we all know is a big fat lie. And do you think Al Collins, driving that Bronco, or somebody else will write a tell-all book that says, O.J. told me this directly? There's a journalist who already came out today and says, here's what O.J. said to me, and it's pretty damning as well. I'll be sharing that with you coming up next. And then do you think we'll ever learn the truth? And when I say that, it's obvious that O.J. killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, but do you think that we will ever learn the truth, meaning what really, really, really happened? That O.J. did it, of course, and what happened in the moments in the maybe hour beforehand, and all the way up to the moment he killed them, and then in the immediate and later aftermath. It is shocking. Dr. Michael Baden, who was a defense expert, you hear him all the time. He's a Fox News contributor, and you're going to hear a little bit of audio from him during the testimony. He talks about it today, about what happened in the immediate moment where they were called at midnight by former attorney Shapiro. David Shapiro, I think it was. Anyway, Shapiro, every single one of the defense attorneys, the dream team that could only be afforded by rich folk, and is why he got off. And Dr. Baden said that today. But they brought him in. They called him at midnight. They hauled his butt in. He was at Kardashian's, the father who's deceased now, the Kim Kardashian's father and others, brought him in, and what the cops did when they showed up, what they did, how they it's just crazy. I'll tell you all these stories coming up next. We got 3 lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. And as I said, coming up next, you're going to hear from Dr. Michael Baden, and much, much more coming up next. His testimony during the O.J. trial, so much more. 800-288-WBAP, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.
Had cut himself. He wasn't quite sure how he cut himself. And noticed he had been bleeding, but didn't know how it came about.
Dr. Michael Baden, who was a defense witness, he actually said that they called him at midnight. Attorney Shapiro, I think it's Neil Shapiro, I can't remember what his first name was, and he unfortunately has passed away. All of them have the dream team. But Attorney Shapiro called him at midnight. He came over to the house. They talked to O.J. They looked at everything, and then O.J. all of a sudden left. He fled. While they were talking to him, and Robert Shapiro, thank you, brother. So he fled. behind his attorney's backs, left the room, and then fled. And that probably was the precursor to the Bronco chase, obviously. The cops came at that point, and somewhere around there, and they interviewed everybody, and they were going to actually arrest Dr. Baden and one other doctor that was called in to help, with their expert testimony, and because they thought they helped OJ escape. Isn't that amazing? He shared that today. So many things we're going to learn. But do you? What's your most memorable moment from the trial or from your personal life when the verdict came out? Do you think OJ killed Nicole and Ron like just about everybody, including me, does? And do you think Al Cowlings, the guy who drove the Bronco, or somebody else will write a tell-all book and say what OJ actually told them, like, yes, I killed them, don't tell anybody, I had to do it for this reason, and blah, blah, blah. And will we ever learn the truth, in your opinion, the real truth, which we already know, but the details? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Four lines open for you. Ryan in Dallas, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP. Let me say it this way, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Ryan.
Hello, how are you tonight?
Good, hope you're not getting attacked by a dog.
No, he's in my car with me and just making some noise.
All right, go ahead.
Well, my question was, with the victims' families receiving the judgment in the civil trial, do they have any chance of receiving money from OJ's estate now that he's passed?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question because I heard that this afternoon on Fox. They will have a chance to take their estate, and I pray to God, and what little I know is, and this is supposition from my side, or assumption. What little I know about these kinds of things, the judgment's been made. It's been for years. They got almost nothing out of OJ, and he literally told a journalist at the time. This journalist, let me get her name here, a lady named Caroline Graham. She wrote a column in the Daily News today. OJ told me in 97, 3 years after the homicides, that if he killed Nicole and Ron, he would never pay a penny to their families. But after the interview, what surprised her the most, I'll share that in a little bit. But here's what you got. And he did that. He fought tooth and nail. And this is going to shock you and me, like as far as several things. But first of all, he was worth $3 million when he died today. And that's about right for what we would think. We'd think 3, maybe 10, maybe 20. Who knows? He had to spend a lot on his defense, I'm sure. Second of all, and for his defense on his jail, being incarcerated, 10,000. Listen to this. Wouldn't you like to get 10,000? We're going to round it. $10,600 per month. Wouldn't you like to get that? That's his pension.
Exactly.
Yeah, $10,600 a month, which comes to or over $125,000 a year just from his pension from the NFL. Sports Illustrated actually says they think it's $25,000 per month. Who knows? Either way, we got one more thing here too. He had to pay. They found him liable for $33.5 million. But according to Nevada court filings from Ron Goldman's father, Fred, he, in a 2021 interview with KTNV Las Vegas, Simpson only paid about $133,000 of settlement up till then. And the Goldman family, as you and I know, if it's your loved one, it's not about money, but it's about doing anything you can to punish that son of a beach. I said, right? Who killed their son and killed his either friend, lover, or whoever they were together. Doesn't matter.
Absolutely, well, great. I mean, I hope they're successful.
Okay, and any comment on what your most memorable thing is from the trial, or maybe on the day it happened, the verdict came down, in what you witnessed or saw in your personal life, or anything like that? Do you think we'll ever learn the truth, meaning the real details of the homicides? We all know he murdered her.
I hope we do someday. I mean, I hope for the record we get it all clear and in the air.
Do you think somebody like Cowlings will tell the truth before he dies? He's 76 now. I bet you he will, because he wept in the civil trial, and he said about OJ beating the hell out of Nicole and bruises and all sorts of things. And he wept, meaning I think it says he had tremendous guilt for what the truth was, whether OJ told him or not. Do you think Al Cowlings might tell the truth, especially now that his old quote-unquote friend is dead?
I think there's a possibility. I mean, there's no recourse on him for coming clean.
Yeah, I think he needs to do what's right. I appreciate your call, Ryan, and have fun with the doggy. All right, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. So And by the way, what's your most memorable moment from the trial or in your personal life when the verdict came in? And do you think O.J. killed Nicole and Ron? And do you think Al Collins or somebody else close to O.J. at the time of all this or afterwards will tell the truth about, maybe here's what happened, he told me this, and he told me he did kill him in confidence? There's got to be at least a couple people in his life. His children today are asking for privacy and all kinds of stuff. Nobody's here to go after his children, but here's the deal. The man has no right to just about anything other than for his children to be treated with respect. But there's no respect for this man. There's no respect for his legacy. And in fact, we have a right to pick apart every single thing about this man and to shout it from the hills. No matter how much people felt, gratefulness because they thought the cops were racially, had racial animus toward them. No matter how many African American people felt and got excited over it, the truth of the matter is, the truth must be told. And one of the things I'm going to say it again tonight would be really fascinating to hear from is if you're an African American and you celebrated the verdict, even and nowadays you realize that he in fact murdered them, or maybe even knew it, but wanted to, what was discussed and what was truthful in this is a lot of people that were black that were celebrating this they knew he was guilty, or they pretty much figured he was guilty, but they felt like they finally got vindicated. And the context of this is critical. The Rodney King riots, the death of Rodney King at the hands of cops, but it really was his fault. I side with the cops in that. But they moved that jury to the Simi Valley, and the cops got a fair trial, and they were acquitted, rightfully so. Then you had another case with another black man who was refusing to roll up his windows, was shot and killed by police. So you had tremendous animus with the King riots. Man, I'm going to get into this a little bit more. Also, coming up next, our line's wide open for you at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. I've got social media reaction to it that's fascinating. I'm going to give the details from the journalist who interviewed O.J. 3 years after the case and it was acquitted. What he said, that trial was that trial was 9 months long. 9 months where every day it was in the top of the news, every single day. This was it. Soap operas canceled, or at least pushed aside for this trial that nobody could turn away from for understanding reasons. It grabbed everybody, and I do think saying it's the trial of the century, and it was, and it will be, and it is, the most riveting trial of the century. Coming up next, we're going to continue with our coverage. And much more audio, too. Next, you're going to hear what Eric Shawn said, who literally covered it for Fox and saw everything that we didn't see. And what he's going to tell you is going to grab you by the you-know-what's next.
What really haunts me, I filed more than 2,000 live shots, anchored on the Fox network with the verdict, but I was never able to show the autopsy photos. If you see the autopsy photos yourself, you see the anger, you see the rage, you see the hatred in this vicious, brutal crime. Nicole Brown Simpson's neck, I remember seeing her side of her neck was a huge, deep gash. She was nearly decapitated. Her carotid arteries had been cut. The knife nicked her backbone. It was thrust so strongly into her. This was hatred. This was anger. You had the blood pattern, the blood drops going up the driveway to O.J. Simpson's Bronco. The index finger was cut 2 inches. You had the blood spot on the door handle. You had the blood spot on the console where he would have to put the Bronco in gear. Blood going up at his house on the wooden floor of his home. Blood on a sock and this sort of thing.
That was shocking to me. I heard after O.J. died, within minutes, I was listening on Fox News. I think it was during Harris Faulkner's show, or Harrison Faulkner. Anyway, it doesn't matter. On her show, a big fan of hers. I don't get to see her too much because of our shifts differentials, but she had him on, and his reaction was even better than this. It was the first time. The first time's always the best, including me as a talk show host. And he was visceral in his description. That was pretty good, but it was much better the first time. It was like I do when I get super passionate and disgusted. And to have that reaction, a natural reaction from a docile man who's been reporting for Fox News, indiscriminate kind of personality, You don't. I will never forget that man's name because I've seen him for years. Not because of OJ, but because of that. I didn't know he covered OJ. I forget. I'm sure I watched it back then, but I didn't know. From nowadays, and the point being is to cover it and see things that were never shown to the public, because the trial, a lot of stuff comes out in discovery, and it's shown in the trial without the jury seeing it, etc. To see that visceral and disgusting and visceral of a reaction 30 years later tells you everything that this guy, to this day, Eric Shaw, can be taken right back to the moment he saw those pictures, because it's that. You have to understand, you have to understand how much anger and rage and hatred filled O.J. Simpson with his pattern. I played you the 911 call from Nicole Brown Simpson, who he murdered. The pattern of beatings, abuse, terrorizing a woman who was 1/20th or 1/50th his strength. A man who, you and I look at these people on the NFL on television. Even the quarterbacks were like, oh, look how small they are. They stand up to you, even the smallest one, and they are towering over you. They will beat you. They will take you with one hand and pick you up and throw you. The weakest one on that NFL field could beat the living crap out of you with this, or maybe not that, because you might be better at fighting. You know what I'm saying? Outnumbers you, outstrengthens you with their toweringness in a way that when you up close to him, you're like, I wouldn't mess with that guy. And imagine OJ, one of the most successful college football player, apparently, quite possibly of all time. He was Bob Costas gave an interview. I can't stand him because he's a leftist, anti-gunner, and etc. But nonetheless, he was talking about this today, and Bob said that he was the best player in college at that time. And I mean, you can't understand. It's an understatement. You can't understate how amazing this man's gift was. But he apparently had abusive rage within him. And Nicole probably got sick of it and started dating around, saying, screw you, you're not going to own me. And so he beat the snot out of her, and then one day he murdered her in raw rage. Do you understand that he stabbed her in the bone in the back? Do you understand that he cut her voice box wide open, as Shaw said, her carotid artery wide open? Do you understand this was like a shark mauling a woman for, several minutes with stab wounds everywhere? And that same happened to Ron Goldman. And, a lot of people were mentioning Nicole, but very few mentioned Ron today, which really peeves me off. Here's my question for you. What's your most memorable moment from the trial, or maybe in your personal life after the verdict came down, people reacting? I would love to hear. I've been saying this. I want to keep saying this. If you're an African-American person who cheered, like one of my dear friends, Dave, who, black guy, he was in the Q Dogs, which is a black frat. I don't know if it's, I'm sure it's a national frat. And I would joke around with him that I was a Q Dog, and, I did the Q Dog stuff he taught me. And we're still friends. We still stay in touch. We had drinks and lunch one day over Christmas time when I was in town. He's still there. And anyway, he celebrated, and I can't remember exactly, but he wouldn't admit that OJ was guilty of doing it, but he was so happy. And I couldn't understand it, and I was frustrated with him. So we parted ways halfway on the way home that we always did from our walk on the way back to our dorm rooms. But we still remain dear friends. And I wonder what folks like my friend Dave would say today. I called him. I reached out to him today and asked him if he wanted to come on, but I haven't heard back yet. So, but there has to be somebody who's willing to come on tonight that's listening. As an African-American that maybe cheered like my friend Dave did, but today will admit the guy was a murderer, but here's why I cheered. That perspective would be fascinating. 800-288-WBAP is our number. And maybe some other things that you might want to talk about with us tonight is, do you think OJ killed Nicole and Ron? I mean, I think you'd be living under a rock if you didn't think so. Do you think that Al Cowlings, his friend at the time, who drove the getaway vehicle and was in a slow-speed chase for God knows how long that was, on live national television, people were lined up. It was the chase was so long and so massive, you have to understand that scores of people, I mean hundreds of people or more, were on bridges on the overpasses of the LA freeway as he was going on the slow speed chase. They knew he was coming this way on the highway. They all flocked to the highway. This is how unbelievably massive. This is and was and will always be the trial of the century. There will be nothing better. Maybe you can compare it to with World War II, the something like the Lindbergh's baby getting kidnapped, or in World War II, was it the Rosenbergs who were considered spies and stuff like that and were put to death? That trial. I mean, this is that magnanimous, and the people nowadays that weren't alive during this don't understand it, and they may never understand the insanity of this massive grabbing trial and the impact. And as I was going back, have you ever heard, my son is 20 and my daughter's 17, so they know all these hipster things that I don't know, and they will use the things they learn on social media or whatever, or the terms that, that make them sound funny, purple drank, orange drank, or Korean rooftop. His fiance is Korean American, and we joke around, he joked around with it and his family about Korean rooftop. Korean rooftop is a meme. Just Google it and you'll see it's a meme. It's Korean people in Los Angeles during the King riots, and they are on their businesses, on top of their convenience stores, on top of the building, and they are with AR-15s, and they're standing above, guarding their property so that looters and rioters after the Rodney King verdict would not attack their business. And so that's a meme even in 2024, Korean rooftop, that comes from that, for example. This was, you saw insanity with the riots. Reginald Denny, the truck driver, the white truck driver who did nothing wrong but work that day, he was stopped at an intersection with the riots, and they dragged this man, Reginald Denny, who did nothing to anybody ever. They opened a semi door and dragged him out of his car, and they beat him to death alive. Do you remember that? There is so much that you and I may not remember. The hate, the disgust, the anger, the rage, the excusing of a murder, a double murder, a vile, heinous murder of a man who was a coward, who wouldn't even surrender like a man, who was a child in the backseat of a Bronco being moved around, driven around in a police chase. As I talk about this with you tonight, and we talk about this, and when I play more audio, this is going to bring back so much of everything. And I'm going to keep mentioning this all night. If you're an African-American person who cheered at the verdict, and I'm going to play the montage of African-American people just going nuts at this, seriously, from the news, which is insane. And you now are willing to say, hey, Chris, I know OJ did it, or even then I did, but here's why I felt that way. That would be a fascinating thing. Everybody's calm now. It's been 30 years. None of us were at the time, regardless of what side we were on. All right, we have two lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. As I told you, coming up next, I'm going to play you the reaction, kind of a montage of African-American people reacting and just going nuts and celebrating the verdict. We'll talk to Bill in Plano as well. This is going to be great. He has something to say about the jury. That's coming up next as well. Your call, 800-288-WBAP, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.
Find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty.
That's his done to the black community. He's not guilty. I'm just happy.
That's justice. Yes. Yes. That's justice.
Man, it's unbelievable. Folks cheered and went nuts. You're going to hear in a little bit about the journalist that interviewed him right after the acquittal, 3 years after the acquittal, from the Daily Mail, and how women and people were throwing themselves at him all night long and getting free drinks. He got free drinks. He's like, let's go to the bars. He get free drinks all day and all night. And some of the women that were gorgeous throwing themselves at him, she asked them as a woman, she's like, do you not realize he's a murderer? You don't think he did it? She goes, oh, yeah, he did it, but it doesn't matter. He's a huge celebrity. Women were still betting down. She said, do you worry about him murdering you? She goes, no. I think he did it, yeah, but I don't care. Do you understand? That was after he was acquitted, and like 3 years later. I mean, this is insanity. All right, one line open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. What's your most memorable moment from the trial, or your most memorable from your personal life when the trial verdict came down? Do you think O.J. killed Nicole and Ron, as me and most do? Do you think that Al Cowlings, who drove that getaway vehicle in the chase, the Bronco, or somebody else will write a tell-all and be honest and say, here's what O.J. told me? And do you think we'll ever learn, quote-unquote, the truth, which is obvious, but yet we could learn more? Bill in Plano, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP. I should say on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Bill.
Howdy, Chris. Really interesting show. Thank you for this. It's kind of an expurgation for us. I remember this so clearly. Back in the 1990s, the long, slow drive on the freeway, everybody watching, as you mentioned. The thing of it is, toward the end of the 90s, a few years later, there was a female juror who admitted, I forget her name, but she said, we on the jury were not shown several items of concrete evidence. For instance, the fact that O.J. Simpson was known to be very fond of a pair of Giorgio Armani $500 pair of shoes.
Yeah, Brulio. I remember that. Bruno Mugliani or something like that. Yeah, I remember that.
The Armani shoe.
Not Armani. It was Bruno I'll look it up, but it was Bruno. It started with an M.
It's very distinctive, and the jury was never shown that, the bloody footprints from that particular shoe, which is very expensive, and few people have. Also, the glove. You know, if the glove doesn't quit, you must fit. You must acquit.
I've got that audio. We'll play it coming up next. They're Bruno Magli. I was right. It's that's what he was wearing, and those are very distinctive. And if you look right now, they're between, the cheapest ones are $100, but they go up to $550, and God knows what is what they are. Neiman Marcus does a pair for $550, for example.
Right. And also with regard to the glove that didn't...
Wait, let's take that for a moment. The killer wearing $550 shoes, possibly. I mean, O.J. wasn't wearing the $100 ones because he's a wealthy man at the time, right? So the killer was also wearing the same shoes O.J. wore. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Really, it is, how likely is that? Not very.
Right. I appreciate...
With regard to the glove...
the glove must have quit. If the glove doesn't fit, you must quit. Those gloves were soaked with blood from O.J. murdering the two people, so that's why they didn't fit. They shrunk. Also, I didn't know this until this afternoon, that O.J.'s defense attorney told him don't use your don't take your arthritis meds so that your knuckles will be inflamed and it won't fit as well.
That's right. And if you look at the footage of that when he was trying to put it on, I remember that most distinctly about the trial. He had the look of surprise on his face because O.J. knew they should fit because he knew they were his gloves.
Yeah, and he was surprised because they were soaked in blood. And when you soak gloves in blood, which, I mean, the man slaughtered, stabbing, cutting open arteries, voice boxes, stabbing in the back, in bone deeply, as a crime of passion because he's anger and rage and jealousy, as an abusive husband who beat his wife as she was cuckolding him because he was a violent, wicked man. Yes, Bill, and to see people cheer for a violent, wicked double murderer is really sad. And to this day, it still hurts. Ruthie in Fort Worth, you're on 820 AM and now 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Ruthie.
Good evening. So I'm just wondering if he could have had CTE. It's something. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's the brain injuries from getting hit all the time. Mm-hmm. So, chronic encephaly, something or other. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, and so that was one of the questions that I have through that because the people who have it, you don't know. It can't be diagnosed until after death. And so I'm kind of wondering, are they going to do an autopsy on him?
That would be fascinating.
Yeah, I think so, because there are several people, and everyone that I've talked to, my husband coached football for 49 years, and he played all through junior high, high school, college, and so And we believe that he probably has that now.
Let me say this: when I saw that your question was going to be on there, I knew you were asking it, honestly. But the question enrages me. At first, it did, because the man beat his wife. The man murdered his wife and Ron Goldman, and knew it was wrong, which is why he covered it up. Which is not, to me, Dane Bramage, if you will. And regardless, if you murder people like he did and you beat a woman like he did over and over again, you are going to jail, and you should, right? And I'm sure you agree with that.
No.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that.
I know.
do.
That's why I know
But
I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying, like, it enrages me at first. I'm fine now because I know where you're coming from. And it's a very valid question. And he was beat the hell out of for 11 years in the NFL and for 4 years in college, and I'm sure for 4 years in high school. So
Right.
I got to roll, but I
but-
appreciate your call, and I thank you very
Okay.
much. Man, that one, it does get me mad, though, but he's a murderer, and he died a murderer, and may God judge him more harshly and more just directly than any one of us ever could or would. Coming up next, you're going to hear the unbelievable, disgusting, sickening, stomach-churning thoughts from a journalist who saw these women throw themselves at O.J., even though they knew he was a murderer 3 years later. Plus, you're going to hear what O.J. said to the New York Times in '95, a week after the jury, and it's just viscerally disgusting.